He hadn't called his children in 5 years. But the week Emily Carter's face appeared on the cover of Boston Living, Daniel Brooks walked into family court and called himself their father. The sentence sat in Emily's mind like a shard of ice as she stood beneath the pale fluorescent lights of the Suffolk County Probate and Family Court, one hand wrapped around a folder thick with receipts, school records, and unanswered messages, the other holding Lily's small fingers so gently it almost hurt. Outside, March rain streaked the tall windows and turned downtown Boston into a blur of gray stone, black umbrellas, and brake lights glowing red along the curb. Noah stood close to her coat, 9 years old and already too careful with his silence, his backpack pressed against his chest as if it were a shield. Lily, only 7, kept staring at the elevator doors across the hall, her pink beret trembling each time someone stepped out. Emily wanted to tell them there was nothing to fear. She wanted to kneel, smooth Noah's hair, kiss Lily's forehead, and promise that no man in a Navy suit could undo the life they had built together. But promises had weight in a courthouse. Promises were what Daniel used to make and break as easily as lighting a cigarette in the rain. Then the elevator chimed. Daniel Brooks stepped out as if the building had been waiting for him. His suit was charcoal, tailored close at the shoulders, his shoes polished, his pale blonde hair swept back with the same effortless confidence Emily remembered from fundraisers, parent nights he never attended, and the last morning he left their apartment with one suitcase and no apology. He saw the children first. His smile appeared on command, soft enough for strangers, warm enough for a judge, practiced enough to make Emily's stomach tighten. "There they are," he said, spreading his arms slightly, not too much, never enough to risk rejection in public. Noah's grip tightened around his backpack strap. Lily stepped half an inch behind Emily's leg. Daniel's eyes flicked to Emily then, and for one unguarded second, the smile changed. Something sharp moved beneath it. Not love, not regret. Recognition, perhaps. The irritating recognition that the woman he once left in a second-floor apartment with a broken heater, 2 sick children, and $23 in her checking account was no longer standing in the same ruins. 5 years had passed. 5 winters of clipping coupons, taking design calls from the laundry room, measuring client spaces with Lily asleep in a stroller and Noah coloring quietly on the floor. 5 years of choosing between gas and groceries, between pride and asking for help. 5 years since Daniel had said, "You wanted the children, Emily. Now handle them," and closed the door like a chapter he had finished reading. She had handled them. She had handled fevers at 2 a.m., school forms, overdue bills, nightmares, birthday candles, loose teeth, parent-teacher conferences, and the soft, terrible questions children asked when they were trying not to sound abandoned. And somehow, in the narrow hours after bedtime, she had built Carter and home from a folding desk beside the kitchen sink into one of Boston's most talked-about boutique interior design studios. Her work was warm, human, lived in. Houses that smelled of cedar, linen, lemon soap, and safety. Rooms where people felt held. The magazine cover had called her the woman redefining New England elegance. Daniel had apparently read only one word: success. "Emily," he said, lowering his voice as he approached, "I hope we can keep this civil." Civil. The word landed between them with the dull sound of an old lie. She looked at him, really looked, and saw the performance in the angle of his chin, the rehearsed concern in his blue eyes, the way his lawyer stood 3 paces behind him, holding a leather briefcase expensive enough to feed a family for months. "For the children," Daniel added, glancing down as if he remembered them on cue. Emily felt Lily's hand curl tighter inside hers. Somewhere down the hall, a clerk called a name. A door opened. A baby cried once, then quieted. The courthouse smelled faintly of wet wool, coffee, and paper that had passed through too many frightened hands. Emily drew a slow breath. She could still hear the woman she used to be, the one who would have explained, defended, apologized for taking up space. But that woman had learned to survive in silence. She had learned that dignity was not softness. It was steel wrapped in calm. "That's all I've ever wanted," Emily said. "For the children." Daniel's smile twitched, just slightly. He had come back expecting the old Emily, the trembling wife who could be cornered with a raised eyebrow and a well-placed accusation. He did not know that Noah had started hiding old birthday cards under his bed, each one written to a father who never came. He did not know Lily had begun flinching at the sound of his ringtone. He did not know that children grow older, and memories, left alone in the dark, grow sharper. The courtroom door opened, and their case was called. Daniel stepped forward first, confident, polished, ready to tell the world he was a father who had been kept away. Emily followed with both children beside her, her heels quiet against the marble floor, her heart steadying with every step. He had returned for custody after her success. But the truth had been living in her house all along. The courtroom was smaller than Emily expected, but colder, too, as if the walls had learned to keep every secret at a distance. Dark wood panels rose behind the judge's bench, polished smooth by decades of other families' grief, other parents' mistakes, other children waiting to be believed. Emily sat at the left table with Noah and Lily behind her, their small bodies tucked into a row of chairs that seemed too large for them. Noah kept both feet flat on the floor, trying to look older than 9, while Lily folded and unfolded the sleeve of Emily's coat in her lap. Across the aisle, Daniel settled into his chair with the easy posture of a man who had practiced being admired. His attorney, Mark Hensley, opened a slim folder and arranged the papers with theatrical precision, as if truth itself could be organized into neat stacks. When the judge entered, everyone rose. Emily felt the floor beneath her heels, solid and unkind. She reminded herself to breathe. She had sat through harder rooms than this one. Hospital waiting rooms at midnight. School offices where she had explained why Noah was suddenly quiet. Bank lobbies where she had smiled while asking for more time. This was only another room, she told herself. Another place where she would not fall apart. Daniel's attorney spoke first, his voice smooth, respectful, almost mournful. He painted Daniel as a devoted father who had been kept at arm's length by a former wife too wounded to separate marriage from parenthood. He spoke of missed opportunities, strained communication, and Emily's demanding career. He mentioned Carter and home 3 times in the first 10 minutes, each time with a faint lift of his eyebrows, turning her success into something suspicious. He submitted photographs of Emily at design events, standing beneath warm chandeliers beside clients and magazine editors. He showed a printed interview where she had said she sometimes worked 60-hour weeks during project launches. He did not show the mornings she packed lunchboxes before sunrise, the afternoons she reviewed fabric samples at the kitchen table while Lily practiced spelling words beside her, or the nights Noah fell asleep on the sofa under her cardigan while she finished invoices in the blue light of her laptop. Ms. Carter is clearly ambitious, Mark Hensley said, with a smile that made ambition sound like neglect. The question is whether 2 young children should pay the price for that ambition. Emily felt the words hit the room, felt them turn strangers' eyes toward her. Her throat tightened, but she kept her hands still. Daniel leaned forward then, his face arranged into quiet concern. I never wanted this to become adversarial, he said when it was his turn. I love my children. I have always loved them. But I believe they need balance. They need a father who is present, who can give them stability. Behind Emily, Noah made a sound so small that no one else seemed to hear it. Not a laugh, not a sob, something in between, swallowed before it could become evidence. Emily's attorney, Ethan Whitmore, did not move right away. He was a tall man in a charcoal suit, calm in a way that made other people lower their voices around him. He waited until Daniel finished, until the silence had settled, then stood with one hand, resting lightly on a folder of his own. Your Honor, Ethan said, we do not dispute that children deserve stability. We intend to show who has provided it. He did not raise his voice. He did not perform. He simply began placing pieces of the last 5 years into the record, one by one, like stones laid across deep water. Payment histories. School attendance forms signed only by Emily. Pediatric appointment records listing Emily as the sole attending parent. Emails from teachers addressed to both parents, answered by one. Screenshots of messages from Emily asking Daniel if he would attend Lily's kindergarten concert, Noah's soccer banquet, parent conferences, birthdays. Some were answered days late. Many were not answered at all. Daniel's jaw tightened, barely, but Emily saw it. She had spent years reading his face for weather. Ethan then presented the visitation calendar Emily had kept, not for court, but for the children, so they would know when to expect their father and when not to. So many squares marked in blue ink. So many crossed out. Plans change, Daniel said, his voice still controlled. I was rebuilding my life. Emily looked down at the table. Rebuilding. She thought of Noah waiting by the living room window in snow boots because Daniel had promised to take him sledding at Boston Common. She thought of Lily wearing a yellow dress for 3 hours on a Saturday because Daniel had promised lunch, then falling asleep before the phone finally rang. She thought of every excuse she had softened before giving it to them. Every disappointment she had wrapped in gentle words so it would not cut too deep. The judge listened without expression, but her pen moved steadily. Daniel's attorney tried to redirect the conversation toward Emily's travel, her business growth, her public image. He asked whether she had employed a sitter, whether she had missed any bedtime routines, whether her clients sometimes called after dinner. Emily answered each question plainly. Yes, she worked. Yes, she had help when necessary. Yes, she had built a company. No, her children had never gone without dinner, medicine, school supplies, clean clothes, birthday cakes, bedtime stories, or a mother waiting when they woke from a bad dream. For the first time that morning, Daniel looked away. Then a court officer opened the door at the back, and a woman from Family Services stepped in with a sealed note for the judge. Emily watched the judge read it, watched her eyes pause, watched the air in the room change by a fraction. Noah reached forward and touched the back of Emily's chair, just once. Lily whispered so softly it barely moved the air. Mommy, do we have to tell? Emily turned, her heart folding around the fear in her daughter's face. She wanted to say no. She wanted to protect them from every adult failure that had led to this moment. But before she could speak, Noah looked across the room at Daniel, then back at his mother, his young face pale but certain. I think we should, he said. The sealed note was not read aloud. Not yet, but its presence seemed to dim the room. The judge looked from the paper to Noah and Lily, then spoke in a voice that held no sharpness, only weight. She explained that she wanted to hear from the children privately, with a family services specialist present, in a smaller room where they did not have to speak in front of everyone. Emily felt Lily's hand slip into hers, warm and damp, and for one terrible second the old fear rose inside her. The fear that protecting her children meant swallowing every truth until it became part of her bones. Daniel leaned back as if this development did not concern him, but his fingers tapped once against the table before he folded them still. Ethan noticed. Emily noticed. The judge ordered a short recess, and the courthouse released a low murmur as people stood, chairs scraped softly, folders closed. In the hallway, the rain had slowed to a silver mist against the windows. Noah and Lily sat on a bench between Emily and a social worker named Mrs. Alvarez, a kind woman with gray-streaked hair and a cardigan the color of oatmeal. Lily stared at her shoes. Noah stared at the floor tiles, counting something only he could see. Daniel approached with his attorney a few steps behind him, his smile pinned carefully into place. Hey, buddy, he said to Noah, too bright, too public. Just tell the truth, all right? Tell them you want both parents. Noah's shoulders tightened. Emily turned her head slowly. Daniel, she said, and her voice was quiet enough that he had to stop walking to hear it. Do not coach them. His smile thinned. I am encouraging honesty. Lily looked up then, her eyes wide and wet. You said if we did not say it right, Mommy could lose the house. The words were not loud, but they moved through the hallway like a door opening in winter. Daniel's face changed before he could stop it. Not much. Just a flash of irritation, then calculation, then the smooth mask returning too late. Ethan stepped closer, his expression unreadable. Mark Hensley cleared his throat, but said nothing. Emily knelt in front of Lily, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Sweetheart, she whispered, you do not have to protect me by being scared. Lily's mouth trembled. I do not want to lie. Then do not, Emily said, though every word cost her. You just tell what you remember. When the children were led into the private interview room, Emily remained on the bench with her hands folded so tightly her knuckles paled. The door closed with a soft click. No courtroom drama could compare to that sound. It was the sound of a mother being asked to trust the world with what she loved most. Minutes stretched thin. Across the hall, Daniel paced near the window, checking his phone, adjusting his cuffs, pretending impatience was concern. Emily watched the rain collect on the glass in crooked lines and remembered Noah at 4 years old, asleep beside a birthday cupcake because he had waited too long. She remembered Lily at 5 asking whether Daddy's car had forgotten the way to their street. She remembered lying on the bedroom floor between their twin beds after nightmares, one hand reaching left, one hand reaching right, promising both children they were safe, while having no idea how she would pay rent the next week. Nearly 40 minutes later, the door opened. Noah came out first. His face was pale, but he walked straight to Emily. Lily followed, clutching a tissue in one hand and Mrs. Alvarez's fingers in the other. Emily did not ask what they had said. She only opened her arms, and both children stepped into them as if their bodies had been holding their breath. Back in the courtroom, the judge summarized what could be shared. Her voice remained steady, but something had hardened beneath it. Noah had described years of missed visits, broken promises, and phone calls that came only after Daniel learned about Emily's article. Lily had repeated that Daniel told them what to say, and that he said their mother could lose everything if they disappointed him. Then came Noah's sentence, simple enough for a child, devastating enough to silence every adult in the room. Dad does not miss us when we are gone. He misses being in charge. Daniel's attorney lowered his eyes to the table. Daniel opened his mouth, then closed it. For once, there was no polished sentence ready. Emily did not look at him. She looked only at Noah and Lily, at their small hands resting side by side on the bench behind her, at the two truths she had raised through storms he had never bothered to enter. The judge did not make a final ruling that afternoon, but she issued temporary orders that left the children in Emily's care and restricted Daniel's contact to supervised visitation pending further review. The words were formal, careful, wrapped in legal language, but Emily felt their meaning settle over her like the first warm blanket after a long winter. Outside the courthouse, the mist had stopped. The pavement shone under the streetlights, and the city smelled of rain, coffee, and exhaust. Daniel stood near the steps, alone now. His expensive coat darkened at the shoulders. "Emily," he called. She paused, not because he deserved it, but because she was no longer afraid of hearing her name in his voice. He seemed smaller in the open air. "This is not over," he said. Noah moved closer to her side. Lily reached for her hand. Emily looked at Daniel with a calm he had never taught her and could no longer take from her. "For them, it is," she said. Then she turned away, opened her umbrella over both children, and walked toward the curb where Ethan waited beside the car. Noah slipped his hand into hers. Lily leaned against her coat. No one cheered. No one needed to. Behind them, Daniel remained on the courthouse steps while Emily Carter led her children into the soft, rain-washed evening, carrying no victory louder than peace. The ride home from the courthouse unfolded in a silence so delicate Emily was afraid to touch it. Boston moved past the car windows in soft streaks of gray and gold, the wet pavement reflecting taillights like scattered rubies. Ethan drove without filling the quiet, his hands steady on the wheel, his attention careful in the rearview mirror but never intrusive. Noah sat behind Emily with his forehead against the glass, watching raindrops race each other down the window. Lily had fallen asleep against her brother's shoulder, one hand still curled around the tissue Mrs. Alvarez had given her. Every few minutes, Noah glanced at Emily as if checking whether the world had truly changed. She smiled at him each time, small and tired, but real. Their house in Brookline was not grand, not the kind of place Daniel would have noticed when he still measured worth in square footage and imported stone. It was a white clapboard colonial with blue shutters, a red maple in the front yard, and a porch light Emily always left on before leaving after sunset. To her, it was more beautiful than any penthouse they had ever pretended to belong in. It had dents in the baseboards from toy trucks, a kitchen table scarred by craft scissors, and a hallway wall covered in framed drawings that Daniel had once called clutter. It smelled faintly of vanilla, laundry soap, and the chicken soup Mrs. Patel from next door had dropped off that morning with a note that said, "For after court, no need to talk." When Emily unlocked the door, Lily stirred and blinked at the familiar entryway. "Are we home?" she whispered. "Yes, baby," Emily said, hanging her damp coat on the hook. "We are home." The words seemed to move through the house and settle into every room. Noah went upstairs without being asked, then came back carrying the shoebox from beneath his bed. It was navy blue, frayed at the corners, with a faded sticker from a summer camp he had attended on scholarship 2 years earlier. He placed it on the kitchen table and stood there, looking not at the box, but at his mother. Emily felt a quiet ache open in her chest. She had known about the box only since that morning. She had not yet asked what every folded paper meant, what every card had cost him to keep. "You do not have to show me tonight," she said gently. Noah swallowed. His pale face looked younger now that the courthouse was behind them. "I want to." Lily climbed onto a chair beside him, sleepy but watchful. Ethan remained near the doorway, his coat still on, as if careful not to step too far into a family moment he had only helped protect. Emily noticed and gave him a look of quiet gratitude before sitting across from her son. Noah opened the box. Inside were birthday cards drawn in crayon and marker, envelopes with no stamps, ticket stubs from school events Daniel had missed, and small slips of notebook paper covered in a child's careful handwriting. Some said things like, "Dad is coming Saturday." Some had question marks beside dates. One, written in darker pencil, said, "Maybe he forgot because I did something wrong." Emily pressed her fingertips to her lips, not to hide tears from shame, but to keep from making Noah responsible for them. He watched her closely. "I did not want you to feel bad," he said. That broke something in her, but it broke quietly. She reached across the table and took his hand. "Noah, listen to me. A child should never have to protect a parent from the truth." His eyes filled, but he nodded. Lily pushed a folded drawing across the table. It showed 3 stick figures in front of a crooked house with blue shutters. Emily, Noah, and Lily. Above them, in purple crayon, Lily had written, "The people who stayed." Emily looked at it for a long moment, memorizing the uneven roof, the bright yellow sun, the tiny red heart over the front door. 5 years ago, Daniel had left her believing absence was something she would have to explain forever. But somehow, in lunchboxes and bedtime stories, in overdue bills and Sunday pancakes, she had given the children a different language for love. Love was not the person who arrived with excuses. Love was the person who stayed when the heater broke, when the fever rose, when the school project was due tomorrow and the grocery money was thin. Later, after the children had changed into pajamas and chosen a movie they were too tired to watch, Emily found Ethan on the porch, preparing to leave. The air smelled of wet leaves and cold earth. "Thank you," she said. He shook his head slightly. "They told the truth. You made them feel safe enough to do it." Emily looked through the window at Noah and Lily curled together under a blanket on the sofa, their faces soft in the lamp glow. For the first time all day, her shoulders lowered. The battle was not finished. Daniel would file motions. He would protest, perform, and search for another angle. Men like Daniel rarely surrendered control simply because truth had entered the room. But tonight, his voice was not inside her house. Tonight, no one was waiting by the window for a car that would not come. Tonight, the porch light was not a signal to someone who had forgotten them. It was a promise to the people already home. Morning arrived quietly, with pale sunlight slipping through the kitchen curtains and turning the edges of everything gold. Emily had slept for less than 4 hours, but the house felt different when she came downstairs, not healed, not untouched, but steadier, as if the walls themselves had exhaled during the night. Noah was already at the table in his school sweatshirt, turning a spoon through a bowl of cereal he had not eaten. Lily sat beside him in unicorn pajamas, drawing tiny flowers along the margin of her homework sheet. The television was off. The usual noise of cartoons, lunch bags, and rushed reminders had been replaced by the soft hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the old floorboards. Emily poured coffee into a chipped blue mug and stood for a moment at the counter, watching her children exist in a silence they had earned. "Do we have school today?" Lily asked without looking up. Emily crossed the kitchen and touched the top of her daughter's head. "Not today. I called the office. We are taking a quiet day." Noah's spoon stopped moving. "Is that allowed?" For the first time since court, Emily laughed softly. "Yes, mothers are allowed to declare quiet days." The faintest smile touched his mouth, and it felt more precious than applause. By mid-morning, the house had settled into a gentle rhythm. Lily built a blanket fort in the living room with couch cushions and 2 dining chairs, declaring it a castle where only kind people could enter. Noah sat inside with her, pretending to read, but mostly watching the front window. Emily noticed every glance. She noticed how his body stiffened whenever a car slowed outside, how Lily paused whenever Emily's phone buzzed on the counter. Children learned the language of uncertainty too young. They learned that peace could be interrupted by a ringtone, a footstep, a name. Emily wanted to erase that lesson from them. But love was not an eraser. Love was repetition. Love was breakfast again tomorrow, and the porch light again tonight, and a mother's calm voice saying, "You are safe," until the body finally believed it. Just after 11, Ethan called. Emily answered in the laundry room, where the scent of lavender detergent clung to the warm air. His voice was measured, but she heard the caution beneath it. Daniel's attorney had filed an emergency response before the courthouse closed the previous evening, objecting to the supervised visitation order and accusing Emily of influencing the children. Emily closed her eyes. Of course he had. Daniel had always treated accountability like an insult. "What happens now?" she asked. "We respond," Ethan said. Carefully. Factually. No emotion for them to twist. She looked through the laundry room doorway toward the living room, where Lily was taping a paper sign to the blanket fort that said, "Safe House," in purple marker. "He is not going to stop," Emily said. Ethan was quiet for a breath. Not yet. But yesterday changed the shape of the case. The court heard enough to slow him down. Slow him down. It was not the same as stopping him, but it was something. Emily thanked Ethan and ended the call, then stood beside the dryer until the warmth of it steadied her hands. By noon, the first message arrived from Daniel. Not a call. He knew better now. A text, carefully written, almost polite. "I hope you are proud of what you did yesterday." She stared at the words until they blurred. Then another appeared. "You are turning my own children against me." Then a third. "This will look very bad for you when the judge sees the full picture." Emily felt the old pull, the old instinct to explain, to defend, to make him understand that the children were not weapons, not trophies, not extensions of either parent's pride. Her thumb hovered above the screen. Then she heard Lily giggle from the living room, a small, bright sound she had not heard in days. Emily set the phone face down. She would not argue with a man who mistook silence for weakness and restraint for fear. Instead, she opened a new document on her laptop and recorded each message, time, date, exact wording, just as Ethan had taught her. Not revenge. Record-keeping. Not anger. Evidence. That afternoon, while Lily napped under a quilt and Noah helped Emily make grilled cheese sandwiches, he asked the question she knew had been waiting behind his eyes. "Is Dad mad at us?" Emily placed the spatula beside the stove and turned off the burner. Outside, the maple branches moved softly in the wind, bare and silver against the March sky. She knelt so they were eye to eye. "Your father is upset because things did not go the way he wanted," she said carefully. "But you and Lily did nothing wrong." Noah's face folded with an effort not to cry. "I told them stuff I was not supposed to." Emily took both his hands. They were warm, still small, still a child's hands despite everything he had carried. "Secrets that make you feel scared are not your job to keep." He looked at her for a long moment, searching for the trap adults sometimes hid inside comfort. When he found none, he nodded once. That evening, after dinner, Emily found the shoebox back under Noah's bed, but the lid was open now. Not hidden, not buried, just there. A small archive of pain finally allowed to breathe. Downstairs, her phone lit up again and again on the kitchen counter, Daniel's name flashing in the dark glass. Emily did not touch it. She stood by the window, watching the porch light spill gold across the steps, and understood that the next battle had already begun. But, this time, she would not fight to prove she was worthy. She would fight from the quiet certainty that she had always been. By Friday, the story Daniel wanted to tell had begun to crack in places he could not polish. Ethan called just after sunrise, while Emily was packing sliced apples and peanut butter crackers into Noah's lunchbox, his voice low and precise through the phone speaker on the kitchen counter. Daniel had submitted a sworn statement claiming he had been excluded from the children's lives, that Emily had blocked communication, discouraged visits, and created what he called an atmosphere of hostility. The words sounded almost elegant when Ethan read them aloud, dressed in legal grammar and careful punctuation. But Emily heard the hollow space beneath them. Excluded. Blocked. Hostility. He had always known how to turn absence into accusation. Noah sat at the table pretending not to listen, his math worksheet untouched beneath one elbow. Lily was upstairs brushing her teeth, humming the same 4 notes from a song she had learned in music class. Emily kept her voice even. "What do we need?" Ethan paused, and she could picture him in his office overlooking Tremont Street, surrounded by case files, gray morning light on the glass. Everything. Not just what proves he missed visits. Anything that shows you invited him in and he chose not to come. After the call ended, Emily stood motionless in the kitchen, one hand resting on the counter's cool edge. Everything. The word opened a door she had kept locked because survival had not left much room for sorting grief. She had not saved the past to punish Daniel. She had saved it because mothers saved things. Immunization records, preschool art, grocery receipts, tiny mittens, screenshots taken in trembling moments when the truth felt too heavy to hold alone. Once the children left for school, she climbed to the attic with a cardboard box in her arms. The attic smelled of dust, cedar, and the faint sweetness of Christmas ornaments packed away too long. Rain tapped softly against the roof. Emily knelt beside a stack of storage bins labeled in black marker. Winter coats, tax papers, baby clothes, Daniel. She had written his name years ago, then pushed the bin behind an old floor lamp as if distance could make it disappear. The plastic lid resisted for a second before coming loose with a tired snap. Inside lay the remains of a life he now pretended he had fought to keep. Printed emails. Birthday invitations returned unopened. A Father's Day card Lily had made in preschool, glitter still clinging to the fold. A photo of Noah at his first soccer game, standing near the sideline with a medal around his neck, eyes searching beyond the camera. Emily remembered that day with painful clarity. Daniel had texted at 10 minutes past kickoff. Work crisis. Tell him I am proud. Noah had scored 1 goal and looked toward the parking lot before he smiled. Emily pressed the photo flat on her knee and let herself breathe through the ache. By noon, the kitchen table had become a quiet battlefield of paper. She organized everything by year, then by month, then by broken promise. There were messages where she had offered holiday schedules, school concert times, medical updates, and weekend options. There were Daniel's replies, scattered and thin. Maybe. Too busy. Next time. Stop making this difficult. There were longer silences, weeks and sometimes months wide, where Emily's messages stood alone like porch lights left on for someone who never arrived. Ethan came by in the afternoon, removing his coat at the door and wiping rain from his glasses. He did not speak for a moment when he saw the table. Not because the evidence was dramatic, but because it was ordinary, and the ordinary nature of neglect was sometimes the cruelest part. This is strong, he said quietly. Emily gave a small, tired laugh. It does not feel strong. It feels embarrassing. Ethan looked at her then, not as an attorney reviewing a case, but as someone who understood that dignity could be bruised without ever making a sound. Emily, none of this embarrasses you. She looked down at the Father's Day card, at Lily's uneven letters spelling Daddy in purple glitter glue. It feels like proof that I kept hoping longer than I should have. No, Ethan said. It is proof that you gave him every chance to be a parent. The words settled in her slowly, warmer than she expected. That evening, after the children came home, Noah found the photo from his soccer game at the edge of the table. He picked it up, studied his own smaller face, and said nothing. Emily braced for sadness, for questions, for another careful wound opening. Instead, Noah placed the photo in the evidence folder and slid it toward Ethan. Use this one, he said. I remember looking for him. Lily, standing in the doorway with her backpack still on, whispered, I remember Mommy clapping loud enough for 2 people. Emily turned away toward the sink, blinking hard at the window above it, where dusk had turned the backyard glassy and blue. Daniel had built his case on the belief that children forgot what adults found inconvenient. But in that kitchen, beneath the soft yellow light, with the rain tracing silver lines down the glass, Emily understood the truth that would undo him. They had not forgotten. They had simply been waiting until someone finally asked. The following Monday carried a brittle kind of brightness, the kind that made every window in Boston flash like a warning. Emily arrived at Carter and home before 8, hoping the familiar scent of wood samples, linen swatches, and fresh coffee would return her to the life Daniel had tried to turn against her. The studio occupied the 2nd floor of a renovated brick building in the South End, with tall arched windows overlooking a narrow street lined with bare trees and black iron railings. Morning light spilled across the work tables, catching on brass hardware, marble samples, and rolls of wallpaper stacked like quiet promises. This place had been built from scraps of time. 10 minutes between school pickup and grocery runs. Midnight invoices. Weekend consultations while Noah and Lily drew pictures on the floor beside her desk. Every chair, every client file, every framed magazine cover was proof that Emily had not abandoned her children for success. She had carried them with her into every room she created. Her assistant, Grace Miller, looked up from the reception desk when Emily entered, her expression too careful to be casual. "There is someone waiting in your office," Grace said softly. Emily stopped with one hand still on her bag strap. "Who?" Grace glanced toward the frosted glass door. "Daniel." For one moment, the studio sounds faded, the printer humming, the radiator ticking, the muted traffic below. Emily felt the old reflex move through her, that cold internal tightening Daniel had once mistaken for obedience. Then she exhaled. "Did he have an appointment?" Grace shook her head. "No. He said it was personal." Emily set her bag down, smoothed the sleeve of her cream sweater, and walked toward her office. Daniel was standing by the window when she opened the door, studying the street below as if he owned the view. He turned slowly, offering a smile that belonged at a business lunch, not in the private space of the woman he was trying to discredit in court. "Nice office," he said. His eyes moved over the walnut desk, the framed article on the wall, the shelf of design awards, the small photograph of Noah and Lily at the beach in May. "You have done well for yourself." Emily left the door open behind her. "You need to leave." His smile hardened around the edges. "I came to talk before this gets uglier." "It got ugly when you brought the children into a story you wrote for yourself." Daniel slipped his hands into his coat pockets, still calm, still polished, but there was a restless energy beneath it now, a fine crack spreading under glass. "You think a few old texts and emotional statements will decide everything? Courts like cooperation, Emily. They like parents who encourage relationships." She looked at him across the room, remembering a younger version of herself who would have rushed to fill the silence, terrified that his disappointment meant she had failed. "Then you should try becoming one of those parents." The words were quiet, but they landed. Daniel's jaw shifted. His gaze flicked toward the open door, toward the possibility of witnesses. "You are enjoying this," he said, lowering his voice. "You are enjoying making me look like a monster." Emily almost laughed, not because anything was funny, but because the accusation was so perfectly Daniel. He could abandon the work, miss the birthdays, coach the children, file the papers, and still find a way to stand wounded in the room he had entered uninvited. "No," she said. "I am tired." "There is a difference." For the first time, something uncertain passed through his face. It disappeared quickly. "You do realize what happens if this becomes public? Your clients, your magazine friends, all those people who think you are some inspiring single mother. They will hear my side." Emily felt the threat settle into the air, soft as dust, poisonous as smoke. Daniel had always known where to press. Reputation, stability, the fear of not being believed. But he was standing in a room built after him, surrounded by evidence that she had survived the very things he once used to scare her. Grace appeared at the doorway, her phone in hand. "Emily, do you need anything?" Daniel turned his head sharply, then recovered with a polite smile. Emily did not look away from him. "Yes, please call building security and let them know Mr. Brooks is leaving." A flush rose along Daniel's neck. It was small, but she saw it. He had expected tears, negotiation, perhaps fear. Not procedure. Not boundaries spoken in daylight with the door open. "This is a mistake," he said. "No," Emily replied. "Letting you walk in whenever you wanted was the mistake. I am correcting it." He stared at her for a long second, and in that second she saw the shape of their entire marriage, his need to be obeyed, her years of shrinking, the children learning silence from the space between them. Then Daniel picked up his coat from the back of her chair and walked toward the door. At the threshold, he paused. "You were never this cold before." Emily looked at the photograph of Noah and Lily on her shelf, their faces sunlit and windswept, their hands full of seashells. "I was never this free before," she said. Daniel left without another word. Through the window, Emily watched him step onto the sidewalk, small beneath the bright Monday sky. Grace came in quietly and stood beside her. "Are you okay?" Emily listened to the studio around her, the phones ringing, the floorboards creaking, the soft machinery of the life she had made. Her hands were trembling, but not from fear this time, from release. "I will be," she said. And for the first time, She believed the future was not just something she had to defend. It was something Daniel could no longer enter without permission. By the time Emily returned home that evening, the sky over Brookline had deepened into a soft blue dusk, and the windows of the house glowed with the warm yellow light she had always loved. Mrs. Patel had picked up Noah and Lily from school, helped with homework, and left a pot of tomato soup on the stove with a handwritten note tucked beneath the salt shaker. Good food first, worry later. Emily read it twice, smiling despite the heaviness still gathered behind her ribs. The children were in the living room, building Lily's safe house fort again, this time with stricter rules written on printer paper and taped to the couch cushions. Rule 1, no lying. Rule 2, knock before entering. Rule 3, snacks allowed. Noah looked up when Emily came in, his eyes moving over her face with that quiet, searching look he had developed far too young. Did something happen at work? He asked. Emily hung her coat slowly, choosing truth in a size he could carry. Your dad came by the studio without asking first. Lily froze with a cracker halfway to her mouth. Noah sat straighter. Emily crossed the room and sat on the edge of the armchair, close enough for them to see she was calm. He left. I asked him to leave, and he did. Lily's eyes widened. Were you scared? The question was simple, but it reached deeper than the child meant it to. Emily thought of Daniel standing by her office window, touching the edges of her new life with old entitlement. She thought of the tremor in her hands after he left, and the strange, clean quiet that followed. A little, she said. But being scared does not mean you are not safe. Sometimes it just means your body remembers something your life has already survived. Noah looked down at his knees. I hate that he makes us feel like that. Emily moved to the floor beside the fort, careful not to disturb the paper sign Lily had drawn. I know. For a while, they sat without speaking. The house held them gently, the simmering soup, the hum of heat moving through the vents, the faint sound of a neighbor's dog barking 2 yards away. Then Lily crawled out of the fort and climbed into Emily's lap, all elbows and soft hair and strawberry shampoo. Do we still have to see him? Emily closed her arms around her daughter, wishing love could answer faster than the law. Only in the way the court says is safe. Not alone right now. Not unless the judge decides it is okay. Noah's shoulders lowered a fraction. So he cannot just come here? No, Emily said. And he cannot just come to my work either. Boundaries are rules that protect peace. Lily repeated the word softly, as if tasting it. Boundaries. Later, after soup and grilled cheese triangles cut the way Lily liked them, Emily helped the children prepare for bed. In Noah's room, the shoebox was still visible beneath the edge of the bed, lid open, no longer hidden in the dark. He knelt beside it and removed one folded sheet of paper. I forgot this one, he said. Emily sat on the rug while he unfolded it carefully. It was not a card. It was a list, written in pencil, with dates down the side. May 17th, no show. June 2nd, said next weekend. July 4th, called at night. September 12th, forgot open house. The handwriting became neater halfway down the page, as if the boy writing it had grown older while waiting. Emily felt the room tilt around her. Why did you keep this? She asked softly. Noah did not look embarrassed. That somehow hurt more. Because sometimes when he came back, he acted like everything was fine. I thought maybe I was remembering wrong. Emily's eyes burned. She reached for him, and he came without hesitation, folding into her arms like the smaller child he still was beneath all that carefulness. You were not remembering wrong, she whispered. And you do not have to prove your pain to anyone to make it real. Across the hall, Lily called for another bedtime story, and Noah pulled away, wiping his face with his sleeve. Can you keep the list? He asked. Emily nodded. Only if you want me to. He handed it to her. I want Ethan to see it. The next morning, the list lay on Emily's kitchen table beside the printed messages, the missed visit calendar, and the photographs. It was one page, thin as breath, but it changed everything. Ethan arrived at 9, read it in silence, then sat back in his chair with a look Emily had never seen on him before. Not surprise, not pity, resolve. This is contemporaneous, he said, then caught himself and softened the language. It means Noah wrote it while things were happening, not after someone told him what to say. Emily looked toward the staircase, where the children's footsteps had just disappeared after the school bus stop. He thought he needed it so he would not doubt himself. Ethan folded the paper carefully, and placed it into a protective sleeve. Then we will make sure the court understands exactly that. Outside, a delivery truck rumbled past, and sunlight slid across the kitchen table, touching every piece of evidence Daniel had dismissed as emotion. Emily ran her hand over the smooth wood, remembering all the mornings this table had held homework, cereal bowls, unpaid bills, birthday candles, and now the fragile architecture of truth. Daniel had come to her office to remind her he could still intrude. Instead, he had shown her what needed to be protected next. Not just custody, not just schedules, the children's right to trust their own memories. And that, Emily knew as the morning brightened around her, was a battle she would not lose. The second hearing was set for Thursday morning, and by then the air in Boston had turned bright and cold, with a hard wind moving down the streets as if the city itself had somewhere urgent to be. Emily woke before the alarm, lying still in the dark while the house breathed around her. The radiator clicked in the hallway. A branch brushed softly against the upstairs window. Somewhere below, the refrigerator hummed with the steady indifference of ordinary life. For a few minutes, she let herself listen to those small sounds, because they were proof of everything she was fighting to preserve. Not luxury, not applause, not the polished version of motherhood Daniel's attorney kept trying to create and destroy in the same breath. Just breakfast bowls in the sink, sneakers by the door, spelling tests on the fridge, and two children who deserved to sleep without wondering which adult would disappear next. By 7, Noah and Lily were dressed for school, though neither of them had eaten much. Emily had decided they would not attend the hearing this time unless the court required it. The thought alone seemed to loosen something in their faces. Mrs. Patel arrived with a thermos of chai and the quiet authority of a woman who had raised 3 children and several neighborhood emergencies without ever calling it heroism. She wrapped Lily's scarf twice around her neck and told Noah she expected a full report on his science project later. Emily watched them leave for the bus stop from the front window, Lily's purple backpack bouncing against her coat, Noah walking close beside her. When they disappeared around the corner, Emily pressed one hand flat against the glass. Then she turned toward the folder waiting on the kitchen table. Ethan picked her up at 8:15. He did not fill the car with reassurance. Emily was grateful for that. False comfort had a way of making fear feel foolish. Instead, he reviewed what mattered. Daniel's unauthorized visit to her studio, the messages sent afterward, Noah's dated list, the pattern of missed visitation, the family services notes from the private interview. "We are not arguing that he is imperfect," Ethan said as they crossed the Charles River, sunlight flashing across the water. "Every parent is imperfect. We are showing a pattern of control, inconsistency, and pressure placed on the children." Emily looked out at the river, its surface broken by wind. "And if he says I made them say it?" Ethan's hands remained steady on the wheel. "Then we let the record answer for you." The courthouse looked less frightening the second time, though no warmer. Emily stepped through security, placed her bag on the conveyor belt, and felt the familiar surrender of entering a building where strangers would weigh the shape of her family. Daniel was already in the hallway outside the courtroom, speaking with Mark Hensley. He wore a dark blue suit today, softer than the charcoal one, a fatherly choice, perhaps. When he saw Emily, his expression shifted into something wounded and noble. She almost admired the speed of it. "I hope you are prepared to stop this," he said as she approached. Ethan stepped slightly forward, not blocking him, just marking the line. "All communication goes through counsel." Daniel ignored him. His eyes stayed on Emily. "You know what you are doing to them." Once, that sentence would have entered her body like a key, unlocking guilt, panic, explanation. Today, it found no door. Emily walked past him without answering. Inside, the courtroom smelled of paper, varnished wood, and bitter coffee. The judge entered promptly, and the hearing began with Daniel's attorney challenging the temporary restrictions. Mark Hensley spoke of parental alienation, emotional coaching, and reputational harm. He described Daniel as a father devastated by distance, a man punished for rebuilding his life after divorce. Then he made the mistake of mentioning the children's statements as if they were fragile things Emily had planted. Ethan rose slowly. His voice was calm enough to make the room lean in. He submitted Daniel's texts, the studio incident report, and then Noah's list. Not dramatically, not with outrage, just page after page of dates, words, absences, and the careful handwriting of a child who had been trying to trust his own memory. The judge read in silence. Daniel's face remained composed until Ethan asked permission to play the voicemail. Emily had forgotten about it for years, tucked among old files from a broken phone backup. Daniel's voice filled the room, casual and impatient, recorded on the night of Lily's kindergarten concert. Tell them I cannot make it. And Emily, do not make this into some tragic thing. Kids forget. The courtroom went still. Emily felt the words pass through her, but they no longer belonged to her. They belonged to the record now. They belonged to the pattern. They belonged to the truth. Daniel stared at the table, his polished image thinning under the fluorescent lights. Ethan did not look triumphant. Emily did not either. There was no joy in proving that children had been hurt by someone who should have shown up. There was only the sober relief of seeing reality finally take up space. When the judge looked over her glasses at Daniel, her voice was quiet but edged with finality. Mr. Brooks, children do not forget abandonment simply because adults find it inconvenient. Daniel lifted his head, but for once, the room did not arrange itself around his version of events. For once, he was not the author of the story. Emily sat very still, hands folded in her lap, feeling the old fear leave her not all at once, but thread by thread, like stitches being removed from a wound that had finally closed. The hearing did not end with a dramatic outburst. It ended with papers sliding across polished wood, a clerk marking the next order, and the judge's pen moving steadily beneath the white courtroom lights. That was what struck Emily most as she sat beside Ethan, listening to the formal language of protection take shape one sentence at a time. Temporary supervised visitation would remain in place. Daniel would attend a court-approved parenting program. All communication would go through a monitored co-parenting application. Any unscheduled contact at Emily's home, workplace, or the children's school would be documented and reviewed. The words sounded sterile, almost bloodless, but Emily felt each one like a board being nailed across a door that had been left open too long. Daniel sat very still as the judge spoke. His face had the gray, tightened look of a man hearing the world refuse him in public. Mark Hensley whispered something to him, but Daniel did not respond. His eyes were fixed on the bench, not with humility, not with grief, but with the stunned offense of someone who had expected the room to bend. Emily did not look at him for long. She had spent enough of her life studying his reactions. Now she listened to the judge, to the law naming boundaries she had once believed she had to ask for softly, almost apologetically. When the hearing adjourned, chairs shifted, folders closed, and the small crowd moved toward the hallway. Emily stood slowly, her legs unsteady beneath the calm she had worn all morning. Ethan gathered the files, slipping Noah's list and the printed messages into his briefcase with a care that felt almost ceremonial. You did well, he said. Emily let out a quiet breath. I barely spoke. Exactly, Ethan replied. The evidence spoke. The children spoke. You did not need to bleed on the floor for anyone to believe you. The sentence caught her off guard. For years, Emily had thought pain needed performance to be taken seriously. Daniel had trained her in that belief, demanding proof of exhaustion, proof of loyalty, proof of love, then dismissing each proof as too much or not enough. Today, in a courthouse that smelled of paper and raincoats, she had learned that truth could stand without begging. In the hallway, Daniel waited near the elevators. He had dismissed his attorney, or perhaps sent him ahead. His coat was folded over one arm, his tie slightly loosened, his careful image fraying at the edges. Emily, he said. Ethan stopped beside her, but she raised one hand slightly, not to reassure him, only to show she had heard and was not afraid. Daniel's voice dropped low. Do you understand what you have done? Emily looked at him then, truly looked. The man before her was not the towering force her younger self had feared. He was just a man in an expensive suit, standing under fluorescent lights, angry that consequences had finally learned his name. Yes, she said. I protected our children. His mouth tightened at the word our, as if it accused him more sharply than any insult could have. They will hate me because of you. Emily felt sadness then, unexpected and clean. Not for him, exactly, but for the father he could have been if pride had not mattered more than presence. No, Daniel. They are afraid of what you made them carry. There is still time to become someone they do not have to fear disappointing. For a moment, something moved in his face, a flicker too brief to trust. Then it vanished behind resentment. You always did know how to make yourself look noble. The old Emily would have flinched. This Emily simply nodded once, as if he had confirmed something already entered into evidence. Goodbye, Daniel. She turned before he could answer. Outside the courthouse, the cold wind rushed against her cheeks, sharp enough to bring tears to her eyes without sadness. Boston was alive around her, taxis pulling to the curb, pedestrians hurrying past with coffee cups, a cyclist shouting at a delivery truck near the corner. Ordinary life, indifferent and merciful. Emily stood at the top of the courthouse steps and called Mrs. Patel. Lily answered instead, breathless with excitement. Mommy, did you win? Emily closed her eyes. Win. Such a small word for something so complicated. We are safe, she said. On the other end, Lily shouted the news to Noah, and Emily heard her son ask, Safe? The question nearly undid her. She smiled into the wind, one hand pressed to her coat. Yes, she said. Safe. That evening, the house filled with the gentle noise of a life returning to itself. Noah set the table without being asked. Lily taped a new sign inside the blanket fort that read, Court says knock first. Emily laughed so hard she had to sit down. They ate spaghetti with too much Parmesan, and afterward Mrs. Patel brought over a chocolate cake with crooked frosting and 4 candles because, she said, some victories deserved birthdays even if they were not born on the calendar. Later, when the children were asleep, Emily stood alone in the kitchen, washing plates under warm running water. Her phone remained silent on the counter. No messages, no demands, no name lighting up the dark. Through the window, the porch light shone over the front steps, steady and golden. For the first time in years, Emily did not leave it on for someone who might come back. She left it on because everyone who mattered was already inside. The first supervised visit was scheduled for Saturday at 10 in the morning inside a family visitation center near Cambridge, in a brick building with white trim, cheerful murals, and a waiting room that smelled faintly of crayons, disinfectant, and apple juice. Emily arrived 15 minutes early with Noah and Lily, because early had always made her feel less helpless. Noah wore his navy hoodie and kept both hands in his pockets. Lily carried a small stuffed rabbit she had not taken outside the house since preschool. Emily did not tell her she was too old for it. Some forms of courage needed. Soft ears and worn cotton paws. Mrs. Alvarez met them near the front desk with her oatmeal-colored cardigan and warm, patient eyes. She explained the process again in gentle terms. Daniel would visit in a playroom while staff observed. Emily would wait nearby. The children could ask for a break at any time. Noah listened carefully, his face solemn. Lily pressed the rabbit under her chin and whispered, "What if he gets mad?" Mrs. Alvarez knelt just enough to meet her eyes. Then the visit stops. For words. Simple. Firm. Emily watched them land inside her daughter like a chair being placed beneath tired legs. For years, Daniel's moods had determined the weather of every room he entered. Now, for once, there was a rule stronger than his disappointment. Daniel arrived exactly on time, dressed in dark jeans, a gray sweater, and a soft brown jacket that looked deliberately casual. Fatherly. Approachable. He carried 2 gift bags from a toy store, blue tissue paper for Noah, pink for Lily, the kind of detail that looked thoughtful until Emily remembered he had once forgotten Lily's age on a medical form. His smile faltered when he saw Mrs. Alvarez standing beside the children with a clipboard. "I thought this was supposed to feel natural," he said. Mrs. Alvarez answered without apology. "It is supposed to feel safe." Daniel's eyes flicked to Emily, sharp for half a second, then softened as he crouched in front of Noah and Lily. "Hey, you two. I missed you." Noah did not move. Lily gave a tiny wave with the rabbit's paw. Emily felt the ache of it deep in her chest, not because she wanted Daniel comforted, but because no child should have to calculate the emotional cost of greeting a parent. The playroom had a round table, shelves of board games, a dollhouse, building blocks, and a wide window overlooking a narrow strip of grass. Emily sat behind the observation glass in the next room, close enough to see but not hear every word. The arrangement felt merciful and cruel at the same time. She watched Daniel place the gift bags on the table with a bright smile. Lily opened hers first and found an expensive doll still secured in plastic. Noah's bag held a remote control car. He looked at it, then at Daniel. "I do not really play with these anymore," he said politely. Daniel blinked, the smile tightening. You used to love cars. When I was 6, Noah said. There it was, small and devastating. Time, measured not in calendars, but in missed knowing. Daniel laughed lightly, as if the correction meant nothing. He began asking questions with the eager rhythm of a man trying to catch up by skipping the hard chapters. How was school? Did Noah still like soccer? Did Lily still draw princesses? Lily looked down at her rabbit. I draw houses now. Daniel nodded too quickly. Great. Houses are great. He did not ask what kind. He did not ask why. Emily watched Lily's shoulders fold inward and had to press her hands together in her lap to keep from walking through the door. Then Noah said something that made Daniel lean back. Emily could not hear it clearly, but she saw Mrs. Alvarez raise her head from her notes. Daniel's mouth opened, then closed. Noah repeated himself, slower this time. Later, Mrs. Alvarez would tell Emily the words exactly. You keep saying you missed us, but you do not know us. In the observation room, Emily felt tears rise and fall without spilling. Not every truth sounded like anger. Some sounded like a child asking to be seen. Daniel looked toward the glass then, toward where he knew Emily sat, and for a moment all the performance drained from his face. What remained was not cruelty. It was confusion, naked and almost pitiful. He had come prepared to be forgiven by children preserved in his memory, children small enough to impress with toys, easy enough to charm with promises. But Noah and Lily had continued growing in his absence. They had favorite books he had never read, fears he had never soothed, inside jokes he had never earned, routines he had never protected. They were not waiting at the exact place where he left them. The visit ended after 30 minutes because Lily asked for a break and did not want to return. Mrs. Alvarez honored it immediately. Daniel stood in the playroom holding the unopened doll box while Noah walked Lily into the hallway, one hand hovering near his sister's back like a small guardian. Emily met them by the front desk and gathered both children close, not dramatically, not as a statement, simply because they leaned toward her and she was there. Daniel approached slowly. Can I at least hug them? He asked. Mrs. Alvarez looked at the children. Noah shook his head. Lily hid her face against Emily's coat. The answer was quiet, but it was answer enough. Daniel's hand fell to his side. For the first time since this began, he did not argue. Outside, the late morning sun lay pale across the parking lot, and the air smelled of thawing earth. Noah climbed into the back seat beside Lily, then looked at Emily through the rearview mirror. I feel bad, he said. Emily started the car, but did not pull away. Because you told the truth? He nodded. Emily looked at her son's reflection, at the boy who had learned guilt before he learned long division, and spoke gently enough for both children to hear. Truth can make people sad, but that does not make it wrong. Lily held her rabbit against the window and watched Daniel through the glass doors of the center, standing alone with 2 bright gift bags at his feet. He does not know our favorite snacks, she whispered. Emily put the car in reverse, her heart aching with a tenderness too deep for words. Then he will have to learn slowly, she said, and only if learning is what he really wants. As they drove away, the visitation center grew smaller behind them, its cheerful mural fading into the line of brick buildings. Emily did not feel victorious. She felt tired, protective, and strangely calm. Daniel had finally met the children he claimed to want back. Not the memory of them, not the version that made him look wounded. The real children, with real voices, real boundaries, and real lives that had gone on without him. The report from the visitation center arrived on Tuesday afternoon, sealed in a white envelope that Ethan hand-delivered to Emily's studio because, as he said, some papers deserve to be received by a person, not an inbox. The day outside was clear and cold, the kind of early spring brightness that made the brick buildings along the south end look freshly washed. Inside Carteret home, the studio hummed with ordinary beauty, Grace answering client calls, fabric swatches spread across a table, a delivery of handmade tile waiting to be unpacked near the back wall. Emily looked at the envelope resting on her walnut desk and felt, for one breath, the strange collision of her 2 lives. In one, she was choosing paint colors for a Beacon Hill brownstone and reviewing invoices for a Nantucket summer house renovation. In the other, she was a mother waiting for a stranger's summary of her children's pain. Ethan sat across from her, his expression steady. You should know, he said. Mrs. Alvarez was very clear. Emily opened the envelope carefully, sliding out 3 pages of typed observations. The language was professional, measured, restrained, but the truth inside it was unmistakable. The children appeared anxious before contact. The father relied on gifts and broad statements of affection rather than age-appropriate engagement. The children demonstrated discomfort with physical affection. The minor child Noah verbalized concern that the father did not know their current interests. The minor child Lily requested termination of the visit. The supervisor honored the request. Emily read the lines twice. She did not feel satisfaction. She felt the deep, tired sorrow of seeing in black ink what her children had been carrying in their bodies. Ethan waited until she lowered the pages. "This supports continuing the restrictions," he said. "It also supports a therapeutic reunification plan if the court allows future contact." Therapeutic reunification. The words sounded gentle, almost hopeful, but Emily knew they meant something Daniel would hate. Effort without control, time without performance, relationship without shortcuts. "Will he agree?" she asked. Ethan's mouth tightened slightly. "He may agree if the alternative is worse." That evening, Daniel sent his response through the monitored parenting application for the first time. No late-night texts. No private accusations. No name lighting up her personal phone like a warning. Just one message inside the court-approved channel, where every word could be seen. "I attended the visit in good faith." The children seemed uncomfortable because their mother has influenced them. "I request additional time to repair the damage." Emily stared at the screen at the kitchen table, her dinner untouched beside her. Across the room, Lily was teaching her stuffed rabbit how to use a calculator, and Noah was building a model of the solar system from foam balls for science class. Repair the damage. Daniel still believed damage was something done to him. Emily began to type 3 different answers and deleted them all. Then she wrote only what Ethan had advised. "I will follow the court's orders and support any process recommended by the professionals that prioritizes the children's emotional safety." She read it once, removed the word emotional because Daniel would mock it, then put it back because her children deserved language that told the truth. She sent it and placed the phone face down. Noah looked up from painting Mars a rusty red. "Was that him?" Emily nodded. "Through the app. Did he say sorry?" The question was so soft that Lily stopped pressing calculator buttons. Emily felt the room hold still around them. The old version of her might have softened the answer until it was almost unrecognizable. She might have said, in his own way, or maybe he needs time, or grown-ups make mistakes. But her children had been asked to carry too many softened lies already. "No," she said gently. "Not yet." Noah looked back down at the planet in his hand. "I think he is sorry he got caught." Lily whispered, "That is not the same." Emily crossed the kitchen and sat between them on the floor, careful not to bump Jupiter, which was drying on a paper towel. "No," she said, "it is not the same." For a while, they worked in quiet. Noah painted Saturn's rings. Lily drew stars on construction paper. Emily cut pieces of string and watched their small hands create an entire universe on the kitchen floor, each planet given its place, each orbit held by invisible rules. She thought of Daniel, still trying to drag them back into his gravity, still confused that love did not mean control. Later, after bedtime, Emily carried the visitation report to her bedroom and placed it inside the growing case. Folder. The folder had become thick now. Messages, calendars, school records, Noah's list, Mrs. Alvarez's notes. It was heavy in her hands, but not heavier than the years had been. She set it on the dresser and caught sight of herself in the mirror. Her hair was loose from its clip, her sweater marked with a faint smear of red paint from Noah's solar system. Her face older than the woman Daniel had left and calmer than the woman he had come back to find. Downstairs, the house was quiet. No phone buzzing. No headlights slowing outside. No child sitting by a window, waiting for a promise to become real. Emily turned off the bedroom lamp and stood for a moment in the dark, listening to the soft, even quiet of a home no longer arranged around someone else's absence. The next hearing would come. Daniel would bring another argument, another polished version of his intentions, another attempt to rename control as love. But now there were records. There were witnesses. There were children who had found their voices and a mother who would no longer apologize for protecting them. In the darkness, Emily touched the edge of the folder with 2 fingers, not as a weapon, not as a trophy, but as a map of how far they had come. The truth had stopped whispering. It was learning to stand. The final hearing arrived on a morning washed clean by spring rain. Sunlight broke through the clouds as Emily walked up the courthouse steps, turning the wet stone silver beneath her heels. She wore a navy dress, simple pearl earrings, and the camel coat Noah said made her look like someone who knew where she was going. Ethan walked beside her with the case folder in one hand, now thick with months of careful truth. Emily felt its weight without touching it. Every page inside carried a piece of what they had survived. Missed visits, monitored messages, Mrs. Alvarez's report, Noah's list, Lily's words, Daniel's polished denials slowly losing their shine. The children were not with her this time. They were at school, where Noah was presenting his solar system project, and Lily had packed her stuffed rabbit in her backpack for luck. Emily had kissed them both at the door that morning, breathing in the scent of toothpaste, clean cotton, and strawberry shampoo, and promised to be there for pickup. She did not promise victory. She promised presence. That was the only promise she trusted completely. Inside the courtroom, Daniel sat at the opposite table, quieter than before. His suit was still expensive, his posture still composed, but something in him looked worn thin, as if the months of being seen clearly had rubbed away the varnish. Mark Hensley had been replaced by a different attorney, a woman with a practical bun and a stack of notes she seemed to know would not change much. When the judge entered, the room rose, and Emily felt no tremor in her knees. The hearing moved with solemn efficiency. Ethan summarized the records, the visitation reports, the therapist's recommendation, and the children's continued distress around unsupervised contact. Daniel's attorney argued for expanded time, but even her voice carried caution, not conviction. Then Daniel was asked if he wished to speak. He stood slowly, buttoning his jacket with fingers that were not quite steady. For a moment, Emily expected the old performance. The wounded father, the blamed man, the practiced sorrow. Instead, he looked toward the judge and said, "I thought if I got more time, I could make them see me the way I wanted to be seen." The room went very still. Emily looked down at her hands. Daniel continued, his voice lower. "I did not understand that they already saw me. Maybe that was the problem. It was not an apology. Not fully. Not yet. But it was the first sentence he had spoken that did not try to take something from her." The judge listened, then delivered the final order. Emily would retain primary physical and legal custody. Daniel's visitation would remain supervised, with any expansion dependent on consistent participation in parenting counseling, therapeutic sessions with the children when recommended, and demonstrated respect for their boundaries. All communication would remain monitored. The court was not closing a door forever, the judge said, but it would not open one at the expense of the children's sense of safety. Emily felt the words settle over her, not like triumph, but like shelter. There was no gasp, no dramatic collapse, no victory music swelling in some invisible corner of the room. Only a pen signing paper. Only a clerk stamping the order. Only Ethan's quiet hand resting for 1 second on the folder before he closed it. In the hallway, Daniel stopped several feet away from her. For once, he did not step closer without permission. "Emily," he said. She turned. The space between them felt different now, not empty, not tender, but clean. "Tell them I am going to try," he said. She studied his face, searching not for the man she had married, but for the father her children might one day be able to meet without fear. "Do not tell me," she said gently. "Show them, slowly, and do not ask them to make it easier for you." Daniel lowered his eyes. After a moment, he nodded. Emily walked out of the courthouse into a city bright with rain and traffic and ordinary noise. Ethan offered to drive her back, but she asked to walk a few blocks first. She needed air that did not belong to the court. She passed coffee shops, office workers, a woman pushing a stroller under a yellow umbrella, a man carrying flowers wrapped in brown paper. Life moved on without asking whether she was ready, and for the first time, that did not feel cruel. It felt merciful. At 3:15, Emily stood outside the elementary school as children spilled through the doors in a rush of backpacks and voices. Noah found her first, his solar system model held carefully in both hands, Saturn tilted, but still proud. Lily ran behind him, waving a worksheet covered in gold star stickers. "Mommy," she called, breathless. "Did the judge make rules?" Emily knelt on the sidewalk, the spring wind lifting loose strands of hair from her face. Noah watched her closely, old worry flickering for only a second. She smiled before it could grow. Yes, she said. Rules that keep us safe. Lily threw her arms around Emily's neck. Noah leaned in more slowly, then rested his forehead against her shoulder, still holding the universe he had built from foam and string. Emily wrapped one arm around each child and closed her eyes. Across the street, cars passed. A crossing guard lifted her sign, and somewhere nearby a dog barked at the bright, impossible sky. Nothing looked extraordinary. That was the miracle. That evening, the porch light came on as it always did, spilling gold over the steps of the White House with blue shutters. Inside, Lily taped one final sign to the blanket fort. Home means people stay. Noah placed his shoebox on the highest shelf of his closet. Not hidden, just finished for now. Emily stood in the doorway and watched them, her heart quiet in a way it had not been for years. She had not won by destroying Daniel. She had won by refusing to let his absence define the lives he left behind. And when the house settled into sleep, when the dishes were drying and the case folder rested closed in a drawer, Emily turned off every light except the one on the porch. Not for someone coming back, not for someone who had forgotten the way, but for the children sleeping upstairs, so they would always know that no matter how dark the world became, there was a light waiting for them at home.